Moving on to our next contest, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the first fighter to enter the cage, Scott Vowles.
Scott Vowles in the house here tonight. Out of the blue corner in Team Savage, 2-1. Looking lean and mean. This guy, absolutely tough as they come, massive chin. A lot of strengths come to the table from this young and up-and-coming fighter.
Excellent at the double leg off the cage, very slick Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, so watch for that when he goes to the floor, in particular the armbar from the back.
And the type of fighter Dean is just a very tenacious worker. And that's a testament to the fact that he's dangerous off his back and on top in all positions if he gets his hands on you.
He couples it perfectly with his work ethic and to improve his position. He never gives up. You'll never see him shake his head and think, oh, well, I'll let the guy pass. No, he's looking for a way out every time.
And he's gonna need it against the tough and physically imposing Mike Ekundayo tonight. Vowles here to win and definitely eager to impress the crowd tonight in London. Back to Grant Waterman to bring out his opponent.
And the second fighter making his way to the cage, Mike Ekundayo.
Well, if you booked a ticket for Ekundayo Airlines, you're gonna get it tonight. And the nickname certainly earned by the athletic fighter, known for literally picking up his opponents and bombing them all the way across the ring. You'd almost think you're in a pro wrestling show the way this guy picks you up and throws you on your head.
Mike has excellent wrestling. Again, another great double leg takedown, which is going to be interesting in this fight. Who can catch it first? And he's very determined to showcase his stand-up skills tonight. He's alleviated to being much improved in that discipline.
Ekundayo was a little bit dissatisfied with his previous performance. I mean, the last time out at the Warrior Fight Series at York Hall, he didn't lose a second of any round. On the flip side, though, he was a little disappointed because he wasn't able to display that striking pedigree. He says, look, I can kickbox. I am a threat to be reckoned with on the feet. And more importantly, Demon, it's all about the hard work behind closed doors there at Team Titan, as well as the Red Dragons for kickboxing.
He's been putting in some crazy amount of hours. They've had to lock the gym to get him out of the Red Dragons, where he's been working his striking, getting it up to spec. Also on the ground, there's talking about his great guard passes. He's got just this innate ability to stuff the guard, so watch out for that on the floor.
Well, it's another favorite here at the Rise of Champions. Ekundayo undefeated, 4-0, taking on the extremely tough and durable Vowles. We'll go back to Grant Waterman and we'll make it all official here at the Rise of Champions.
Ladies and gentlemen, this next contest is in the Rise of Champions Bantamweight division. Introducing these two warriors, the fighter standing in the blue corner. He weighed in at 134.9 pounds. He represents Team Savage. He is Scott Vowles. And standing across the cage in the red corner, he weighed in at 134.9 pounds. He represents Team Titan. He is Mike Ekundayo. Your referee in charge of the action is Dan Mohamed.
The action continues here at the Rise of Champions. Now at featherweight, 145 pounds, out of the red corner, Mike Ekundayo from Team Titan, 4-0, taking on Scott Vowles in the blue corner from Team Savage, 2-1. An immediate connection by the grapplers, Dean. It was everything the fanboys here in attendance and the pundits had questions about.
Just about to say, Mike Ekundayo is truly touted to be the rise of a champion. Everyone thinks he's got such a massively bright future. Now, does this weigh down on Scott Vowles' head?
Scott thought about a lateral drop there, but now it seems to me actually opted to pull guard. And that shows great decision making actually, because he's probably on the wrong side of a takedown. So better to get the legs around your opponent than give up a more disadvantageous position. Tying up very nicely with the left overhook currently is Vowles.
Vowles switching his hips beautifully, peppering in some shots. Ekundayo keeping his Heavy hips down, looking to pass there on the left side.
Certainly a hallmark of his previous performances, the passing game, but also a real competitive learner. As the fight goes on, he certainly implements his tools more effectively, very good at reading his opponent. Look at that. Playing deep half guard, not so fast as Ekundayo adjusts his hips and disallows that maneuver from Vowles. Vowles now back to the upright. Let's see what he's got, Dean.
Mike Ekundayo, hands up nice and high, some penetrative shots inside to initiate the clinch, but Scott shakes it off.
And look at the kickboxing of Ekundayo. A little stutter step to a right round kick to the lead leg. Lots of head movement off the center line from Mike Ekundayo. I'm a little bit wary of the chin, a little high from Scott Vowles.
Double jab, right hand entry to the clinch.
And
Scott
look at
Vowles,
this.
Unorthodox pulling guard technique. Maybe looking for the rubber guard here, but opts out, goes to the full guard again. Difficult, again, being stuffed up against the cage, let alone with an athlete such as Mike Ekundayo on top of you. He's really good at keeping his hips close to yours and shutting down your guard game in the middle of the mat, let alone up against the cage where you're blocked.
He has a certain authority about him that is so aware of the details in these little minute positions. Look at that. Stepping out very neatly now into half guard. Case in point. And lots of activity from the top from Ekundayo. What he would not want is another stand-up like we saw earlier in the round, Dean.
Scott Vowles looking to secure the side control there, but gives up the mount to Ekundayo. I was just about to say, Scott almost holding down his opponent to look for the stand-up. Doesn't want Mike Ekundayo on top of him. And this is where we see why, that excellent downward pressure as Scott eats the body punches on the bottom. Dominating round there from Mike Ekundayo. Scott unable to shake him off, finding his way on the bottom. His hips nullified, so he needs to change up his game plan in these later rounds. He needs to start thinking about striking on the outside and moving off the center line to stop Ekundayo and gaining that clinch.
And Vowles was at multiple points complacent in going down to the ground, at least opting to drag those legs up, Dean. It would seem to me at various points Ekundayo was able to cause real problems in advancing his position from half guard and there at the end nearly to full mount.
Scott Vowles needs to abandon the pulling guard techniques, pulling the half guard, pulling full guard, looking for the rubber guard. He can't be on the bottom of Mike Ekundayo. He needs to start working for the top. And if he wants to try for submissions, try and work them from the top. That way Ekundayo won't have this such dominant downward pressure on top of him.
Second round of his Schedule 3, Ekundayo versus Vowles.
Ekundayo opens up with a big body kick.
Nice tight jab from Ekundayo, then finishing with the right round kick. That is certainly the most improved strike I've seen from Mike. I love how he pivots and turns into that, whipping the right leg around and chopping down. But this is where he makes his money. This is his office, his wrestling. So physically imposing. But the scariest bit is when a wrestler learns how to kickbox, Dean.
Ekundayo tying it up beautifully, using his feet to gauge the distance, and entry to initiate the clinch and get the takedown again. Much of the same here for Scott Vowles on the bottom, looking to try and submit. Looks like he's trying to work for a triangle, forcing Ekundayo's left arm down. Very difficult to rise his hips up from that position to secure the head of Mike Ekundayo.
And Ekundayo continues to certainly work to improve his position and has plenty of time to do so, nearly 2 minutes on the clock. But he's so methodical, he chews away at you. He doesn't allow you to take anything. And that's certainly a real feather in the cap. Look at the way he cranks on Vowles' chin there with that crossface against a guy like Vowles who's usually unwilling to give up positions like these.
Vowles is dangerous off his back also. If you give him space, he will submit you. Ekundayo, really great job of not giving him any space, forcing his head and his body through. Vowles, interestingly, pushing the arm out almost like an Americana position, trying to gain some space as the referee stands it up.
And Vowles was grapevine in there as well to try to create more space in which to crank that. Movahidi, our referee, stands both up, and Ekundayo now using that right round kick. he's been very effective with that technique. He hasn't been checked once.
Scott Vowles standing too high, keeping his chin too high. It gives a lot of space for Mike to duck under, initiate the clinch. Again, Scott pulls that left leg up the back of Ekundayo and goes to the mat. He must sense that offensively it's not a great position for him to be in.
Continues, though, to be a mirror image of what we've seen time and time and time again. Ekundayo with the takedown, staying very heavy, pinning the top 2 points of contact, if you will, that you really want to go for as a grappler. That would be the shoulders, Dean.
Forcing his shoulder into the face of Scott Vowles, really amplified by the cage behind him. Usually you wouldn't see a fighter force his arm and indeed his limbs forward towards the grappler, but Ekundayo on the top, downward pressures, keeping his hips really close to Scott Vowles, stopping them moving around, and as we all know, hips matter in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
Nearing the end of this round, it's been another very similar one to the previous. Standing in his way, Mike Ekundayo has been able to make Scott Vowles really have to come up with a plan B here, because right now he doesn't have an answer for what Ekundayo has been able to do to him. Scott
Vowles feeling the dominating pressure thus far, but I don't think he's crumbling here. He needs to switch up his game plan though. He needs to let go of this guard position and looking for submissions up against the cage. He needs to go for broke. If his corner are telling him right now, you need to do something definitive, they are telling him the right kind of advice. He needs to stop what he's been doing thus far because he hasn't had much success. Well, the action continues here at Rise of the Champions. We're moving on to the third and final. It's Ekundayo versus Vowles. Third and final round here at the ROC. Daniel Movahedi, our third man in the ring, brings these two athletes together. It's Scott Vowles taking on Mike Ekundayo. 3 minutes on the clock. Let's see if Scott goes for broke. He needs to think twice about landing on his back and giving up positions and initiations for Mike to come in and initiate the clinch and the takedown. He needs to think about the uppercuts, the right hands, the left hooks on the outside. Looking to take Mike's back, but Mike's savvy to that, using the overhook, the whizzer, to stop the back take of Scott Vowles. Scott lifting that leg up now, perhaps to check. He's also got that chin quite high. Ekundayo might look for an overhand right here. Ekundayo comfortable to put that jab out, follow it in with the right hand, initiate the clinch. Scott Vowles again, back and forward movement. He needs to think about lateral movement off that center line. And Ekundayo is showing that right round kick. I think he's going to try and bait, or at least it would be a possible strategy to bait Vowles to try and catch that right round kick, lower his hands, and then catch him with the overhand right. But Ekundayo has such confidence and faith in his grappling abilities. To be honest, in his career thus far, no one's had an answer for this position against Mike Ekundayo. The dominant power there, you see how Ekundayo's controlling the right arm of Scott Vowles. He's pinning it behind his back, and he'll use this to pass. If he can still secure that arm, he'll pass to the left side. Really, really dominant jiu-jitsu and passing game from Mike Ekundayo. And it's been smart because he's not been dragged into a slugfest against a guy, or really any opponent in his career. And so it always gives him that ultimate equalizer of being able to completely shut down his opponents with his wrestling game. And the way that he holds onto those hips really disallows any movement from Vowles on the bottom, Dean. So impressed with Mike's downward pressure. Just hours upon hours of wrestling in the gym. For not getting swept, not getting submitted on the bottom. He's able just to keep his body over Scott Vowles and completely dominate that position. Scott needs to start thinking about open those legs and actively passing. And more importantly, not get tired. It's not exactly a cakewalk to be able to take a guy down repeatedly and disallow anything he's trying to do to you. Ekundayo's not even breathing out of his mouth. Ekundayo cinching up that arm, looking for the punches, the left punches to the head of Scott. Scott here could be rolling for a leg lock. Stuffed by Ekundayo. Look at the way he floats on top. Big punches from the top. We could see a finish here, Chris. Ekundayo slides really smoothly into side control, thinking about that head and arm choke. Look for him to put a ton of downward pressure here and maybe try to step over to the far side and walk like clockwork. Unorthodox from the other side. He needs to jump over to the other side of the body as he goes right there and then there. Now it cinches up nice and tight, Chris. We can see a tap here. This looks really, really tight. And here we go.
just a couple seconds. Wow. Ekundayo was looking for it. You can't fault the performance of really either, man. Vowles, certainly a survivor, certainly able to keep guard quite a bit. Ekundayo able to dictate positional control on top throughout much of that fight, Dean. Another great night for the fans here at Rise of Champions. Your thoughts on both fighters' performance?
Scott Vowles able to be on the bottom but not actively move. Ekundayo sticking to his game plan, not discerning from that trajectory of the win, which is really impressive. It's evident of a high-level fighter, 4-0 from Team Titan. Scott Vowles just couldn't stand up, he couldn't pass, he couldn't throw up submissions because of Mike Ekundayo's dominant downward power and pressure.
Well, the judges are going to have to make the decision and see which way the win column will go. We'll get the numbers and we'll go back to Grant Waterman.
Ladies and gentlemen, after 3 rounds of action, we go to the judges' scorecards. And we have a unanimous decision in favor of your winner. From the red corner and still unbeaten, Mike Ekundayo. Ladies and gentlemen, appreciation for a camera. Scott Vowles.